Does he have it?
Medeiros is going to get it. Medeiros
They're going to toss it. They haven't got it.
He's on the outside line, though, going into the fastest corner on the circuit. Surely this can't work.
Dominic Ligner has got a sensational run. Outside line now, though, for the heavy braking zone. Around the outside goes the Audi R8.
Look how much Miller's caught back into play. Exactly. Miller's still such up. He's not on second and change. All of a sudden, Miller's back in play.
Can Barry do it? Big Barry's going to do it. Big Barry!
Good evening and welcome to the VWSC Historic Championship. Round 3 takes us to the Autodromo di Monza. That is Monza, just around about 30 miles away from the city of Milan. I am Tom Cairns in the commentary position. Paul Glover working behind the scenes. We may get a word or two from him during the course of the broadcast. And we are looking forward to see some 1981 machinery around the circuit. Have a look at the calendar. We've been to Daytona and Mugello. Round 3 takes us to Monza here on this lovely Valentine's Day. Then it's off to Riverside on the 28th at the end of the month, followed by Sebring a week later. Then it's to Le Mans in April, Watkins Glen in July. So we've got a bit of a wait, actually, between those rounds. And it's off to Spa and Road America in August. Silverstone in September. Nürburgring in October, as well as Pegusa in Italy. Then it's back to Daytona again on the 14th of November, and it's rounding off the season at Mosport Park and Brands Hatch in December. That should be a fun season with there being so many classic circuits around. And we look at the circuit of Monza. We are using a previous configuration of the circuit. That's with the double chicane at the Rettifilo. That is in use for today. In case you're wondering why there is an orange section, that is basically if any incidents occur, the penalties will be more severe than if the incidents occur in the blue, just so that you know. 5.79 kilometers, and that is, and that will be for lap 1, just so that you know, because lap 1, as you all know, tends to have more incidents than in other laps. So that's where the bigger penalties will be punished, especially in the orange zone. Looking at the keys to the race, so drivers are made to be aware of the curbs. They are very high, given that we are in 1981, and the aim of the game is to be manageable with the fuel. 2 stops are expected, 120 litres of fuel, and which means we're expecting something like 0.795 to 0.833 litres of fuel per second being consumed during the course of the race. There's only one dry compound, as far as we know. There is the red, and of course the blue is reserved for wets. There has been some weather in the air, or perhaps some moisture being left on the circuit coming into this. So it's going to be quite an interesting race over the course of this one. 250 kilometres it will be. Will we see a race, a strategy involved? We shall see. We are in the closing stages of qualifying, or coming towards the end of it. I think I might have just finished qualifying, thinking of it. And judging by my understanding, I would just Dan Kirby has been topping the timing pages with a 1 minute 41.9, and it's Nicholas Kirsten in second place with 1 minute 44.4 as well. And Dan Herlock back again this season, looking to build on where he ended up. But so far this season, it's been Eduardo Beninca winning in Daytona in round 1, with Dan Herlock finishing in second place and Johnny Gutierrez in third position. And last time out at Mugello, which happened 2 weeks ago, Alessandro Smeraldi finished on top with Dan Herlock once again finishing in second position and Nicholas Kirsten in third place. Let's have a rundown on the championship scores as well, considering that we've done 2 rounds so far. Looking at the GR5 SP2L class, Dan Herlock is at the top of the table with 38 points to his name. And it's Eduardo Beninca in second position, 1 point behind on 37, with Alessandro Smeraldi, who won at Mugello recently, is in third on 36. Johnny Gutierrez in fourth on 33. Then it's Nicholas Kirsten and Timon Suvic with 29 points each, with Wouter de Bruyn in seventh position on 27. Then we've got Magnus Dahlgren on 26. Oliver Day in ninth on 22, who's tied with Mike Bell. That is Ali Kayolazzi in 11th place on 16, with Bradley Sellers in 12th on 13, with Gilles Alon in 13 with 9. Ben Kesby and Tom Lane are yet to get off the mark. In the team standings, Scuderia Brigitte Bardo Ferrari 512 BBLM are at the top with 73 points. That's Smirali and Beninka who are competing for that team. In second place is Smile Power Racing BMW M1 Group 5, who are 13 points off the top. And then it's ME Racing Ferrari 512 BBLM in third place with 55. They're 18 points off the top. And it's Bad Day Racing Ford Sax Speed Mustang in fourth place. That's with Johnny Gutierrez and Jules Lalonde in fourth position there on 42. Followed by Retro Monsters Ford Sax Speed Mustang in fifth, with Wouter de Bruyn and Bradley Sellers there with 40 points to the team's name so far. Let's have a look at the 2L AM class. John Uyan is at the top with 20 points. Then it's Maximilian Petrafsky in second place with 19. Jerry Chen in third with 18. Ross Smith in fourth with 17. And we've got Finishes Goncalves, another point further back in fifth. Likewise with Daryl Kruger in sixth. And Steve Carman in seventh place on 14 points. So just 6 points separating those 7 drivers. George Angelidis, Jules Lalonde, Daniel Pass, and Ryan Polbert Reyes haven't scored a point in that respective class so far. In the teams, MP Tuning Porsche 935K3 are at the top with 34 points. It's Tic Tac Toe Motorsports BMW M1 Group 5 in second place with 33, with SGS Club Italia Ferrari 512 BBLM in third place with 20, followed by Flying Kiwi Racing Porsche 935K3 in fourth with 18 points. Not too bad so far. Moving on to the U2L class, JT Tummy is at the top of the pile with 20 points. Then it's Benjamin Letelic in second place with 19. Then it's Alexander Schultz in third with 18 points. It's Ethan Funk in fourth on 17, followed by Tony McCaughan in fifth with 16, and Daniel Fowler in sixth place with 15 points. Those haven't scored. They are Ilko Busink, Ben Borman, and James Andrews at the bottom there. In the teams, Martini Racing, Lancia, Beta, Monte Carlo with 37 points, just 2 clear over Burgundy Monsters BMW 320 Turbo Group 5 with 35. Then it's SF Motorsport BMW 320 Turbo Group 5 in third with 33 points. No points so far for usually trouble Lotus E-Spirit S1. And we've got one final class to run down. So there's move on to the final class in the AMs. It's the U2L AM. There's John Mayer at the top with 20 points, and Matt Overton in second place with 19, with Eric Monet, Guy Sever, and Adrian Rice all yet to get off the mark. Dark Thunder Racing Lotus Esport S1 with Overton and Mayer. They're the only team to have scored so far. So we are in the warm-up session, which is an opportunity for the drivers just to be briefed so far, just to ensure that they have an understanding as to how the race is going to play out, just to make sure we all get through turn one rather. So to my knowledge, there are 33 drivers who have registered for tonight, which is great news. We will get a grid up once the session transitions into the race from the warm-up, and then it will be underway sooner rather than later for the third round of the series here at Monza. We've been to 2 spectacular circuits over at Daytona and Mugello, and Monza is very much going to be another one to throw another spanner in the mix as far as the championship is concerned, with a lot of brilliant circuits lined up. I mentioned Le Mans, mentioned Brands Hatch as well, and many more to come before the season finishes on the 12th of December. Looking at the weather forecast in terms of how it's been playing out, well, considering this time of the year where it's been rather cold, it's safe to say. Looking at the temperatures around the circuit, 9 degrees air temperature, 28 degrees track temperature over at Monza. Of course, I'll update you when that changes into the race itself. It seems to me like there are clouds gathering over the circuit as far as we know. But like I say, we'll find out when the guys grid up for later. And some drivers racing in Porsches, Ferraris, BMWs, Ford Mustangs I've already mentioned. So we should be in for a cracker of an event here. That is for absolute sure. Do get involved in the live chat if you ever so wish to do, and I'll kindly answer your questions as of when I can. We should be in for a belter of a race, that is for sure. But here we are, round 3 of the season. The modern championship had already gone away, likewise for the historics. And how will the drivers fare around this gorgeous circuit of Monza? Home of the Formula One Italian Grand Prix, of course. Every season, apart from one, 1980 was the only year where Monza wasn't the host of the Italian Grand Prix, as this circuit was undergoing changes to, to the area, I suppose, to where the circuit's at. But it's been a fan favourite, and has Monza. We've seen some classic races over the years. No matter which series it has been, it's certainly put on a show for the fans who love their motorsport. So we are looking at the championship standings in terms of who I think could end up doing well round here. Well, it feels to me like Dan Kirby is going to be one of the favourites to go for glory. Dan Herlock, who's finished second in both Daytona and Mugello, he'll be gunning to go one step higher. But of course, second place wouldn't do too much harm to him, considering that he is the championship leader after all. And then we've got Eduardo Beninca, race winner, of course, in Daytona. Can he pick up another win? We shall see when the lights go out for here. In terms of how many laps we expect here, I'd probably say it's around about 45 laps, working it out with 250 kilometers of an event here. But either way, whether we get pit stops or not, I'm sure we have pit stops anyway, but we should be in for a fantastic race here anyhow. I think we'll see some on-track battles that will go right to the very end. It's going to be a close one, no matter which class we are focusing on. It should be absolutely wonderful to ensure we get some quality racing out there. So in terms of what happened last time at Mugello, I mentioned that Smeraldi, Herlock and Kirsten made up the top 3. In terms of the other drivers who did well in their own classes, John Uyan won out in the AMs, in the 2L SP GR5 AM class. He did very, very well. JD Tammy came out on top in the U2L class as well. He finished P7 overall, which was a great effort by him. And we look at the other class in the field, that is the 2L2, that is George Angelidis, who did rather well on that occasion. Angelidis coming out on top with, 16th overall on that occasion, one lap behind the leader at the end. And Christian Dauger in the U2L1 class, he did well to come out there and finish in 27th overall, which is very, very good to see right there. So the drivers, we just wait for the session 2 transition over into the race, and it won't be too long before we get going around here. And Ross has joined us in the booth to get a word with him on how tonight is going to go. Ross, good evening. How are you?
Good. How are you guys doing?
Not too bad, thank you. On this Saturday evening.
Yeah. Happy Valentine's Day.
So what are we to look out for here at Monza?
Well, it's going to be fast. So there's going to be an interesting displacement with the way that the fuel works out. Obviously, there are quite a bit of turbo cars at the front, which you'd expect out of qualifying. They are still running a slower refill time when they're in the pit stalls. So that means that they'll be sat a little bit longer, not much longer, anywhere from 5 to 10 seconds, depending on fuel strategy. That's based on a full tank. We're just doing a pit box check right now. But it's going to be, very disruptive when we start going through the initial pit stops on the first stints. You're going to see that around, I want to say, lap 17 and 19, somewhere in there, just depending. And then after that, strategies are going to diverge quite a bit, and it's going to be very confusing for probably a little bit. But that's and the rain just started, so there was a chance for this. It's low opportunity for rain, but obviously here we are. Even at 5%, kind of coming down, it can still get the track kind of wet. We found that slicks can work up to a point, especially if there's a dry line, but just depending, it can get wild. So I don't expect there to be much rain during the race, but there's still a bunch in the area around Monza. So yeah, I can't tell you what's going to happen here. It's going to be wild.
Well, what I was going to say was, if it's going to be damp at the beginning, how quick are we expecting for the track to dry out, and how quickly are these wet tires going to really basically be chewed? Because I'd imagine they're going to fall quite quickly around here at Monza.
It's a complicated answer just because it depends on the amount of rain. I mean, if we see pretty steady, it can be, not very, like, you may not even need rain tires. You might be able to run on slicks, which at the start here, just depending on how some of this warm up goes, we might see a lot of people stay on the slicks and just hope that they can keep going and keep a dry line up. But if it starts coming down more significantly, especially if you're out there fighting with people, they're really slowing you down. You try going offline, and it can send you right into the wall. If you're not ready to take on that kind of risk, then it might be worth coming in. But it's going to be 40 seconds to change those tires out, so it's really hard to say for that. You want to try and be on your slicks as long as you possibly can, and it certainly, I'm going to guess the first pit stop, you're going to see some strategies switch up there. You might have people who try and start on rain tires. I don't know why they would necessarily, unless it starts getting pretty wet here while we're sitting and not going out and drying the track out. But I'm going to guess a lot of people are going to want to be on slicks if they can. I'm getting pushed here by Steve Carmen. I don't know if he's behind me or what he's trying to do, but anyway, sorry, a little bit distracted here.
It's all right. I mean, we've got a bit of time before the race begins. I was just curious as to whether being on the slicks or being on the wets is the best way to go about Monza. Because if you start on the wrong tires and you're having to pit in, how much time are you losing in the pits?
40 seconds probably.
That's a lot, isn't it?
Yeah. For a race like this, it's I mean, if you get the strategy wrong, it will send you to the end. But if assuming that strategies work out and things aren't out of sorts, then the main thing that drivers have to look out for is the curbs, mostly through the for the first chicanes, because the backside of those curbs are deadly, and they can very quickly stop a car and throw them right into a line that's right behind them. So it's very problematic for anybody who's right behind, so drivers have to keep their eyes open for that, especially with the rain. I mean, it's going to be chaos, I want to say, for the opening stint. And then after that, it's just going to be who can survive around here the most, who's got the best strategy in terms of fuel saving, if they've been able to hold on to their tires, if they haven't had to change them out. And of course, the ever looming engine life. So anyone who's abused their engines, maybe running more turbo, anyone who's just been creeping over that rev limit, missing shifts, that can come back to bite you just before the end.
I mean, looking at the manufacturers we've got here, then, who do you reckon is expected to really thrive here? Are we looking at Porsches? Are we looking at Ferraris? Are we looking at BMWs? What's your assessment?
So in the 2-liter class, I would say that the Porsche is favored just because of that turbo, but it's a mixed bag. I mean, I wouldn't count the Mustang out. They're the other turbo car, and certainly if any of them are falling behind or the fuel differential ends up getting to them, then the Ferraris are going to be right there. If it stays a little bit wet here, I think the BMWs are going to have a real good shot at staying up with them. And then in the under 2-liter, I feel like the Lancia is probably in a really good spot. It seems to be fairly stable around here. But the 320s, the BMWs, are pretty strong, and those are two turbos. But if you've been watching how Ben Borman and Becky Ely have been driving this Spree, that is a very quick car. So if they are able to run error-free throughout the race, they're going to be a serious threat to all the drivers in the field.
I see. And I'm sure I think we'll be in for an intriguing event here, with there being so many different manufacturers involved, many drivers determined to make their way up the order in the standings. Ross, it's been good to speak to you. Best of luck tonight, and we'll have a chat after the race and see how you get on.
Hopefully you're chatting with me because I've done so well, but I guess we'll see.
Thank you very much.
All right, bye, guys. Good luck.
Very best of luck to Ross Smith, determined to make an impression here at Monza. And it won't be too long before we're on the way. I think, judging by the timing page, it was saying it's like 5 minutes ago, but sometimes the warm-up session can end sooner than expected. So if that's the case, then the grid will be lining up for the 250 kilometers of Monza. We're using the configuration of 1976 to 1993. That includes the double chicane around the course. And of course, the curbs are very, very high here at Monza. So the drivers will just need to be on their toes. They're very easy, as far as handling is concerned, to really lose these cars when you ride over the curbs. So it's vitally important to make sure they get through it. The amount of time you can lose by riding over the curbs can be pretty extortionate. And, well, as far as I'm concerned, or as far as I've been told, the grid has been formed, or is about to be formed now. We can run through the grid and to let you know on who is lining up where. So on pole position, we've got Dan Kirby with Nicholas Kiersten alongside him. Then it's Dan Herlock and Eduardo Beninca on the second row of the field. Going on to the third row, we've got Johnny Gutierrez and Bradley Sellers with Wouter de Bruyne and Iko Basink in 7th and 8th positions, respectively. Round out the top 10, we have got Magnus Dahlgren in 9th and Benjamin Letelic in 10th place, with Maximilian Petrevsky in 11th place, followed by Oliver Day in 12th place. On row number 7, we've got Ryan Polbert Reyes and JT Tammy, who's determined to go for another class win here. We've got Tony McCuffin in 15th place, followed by Ross Smith in 16th position, who we've just spoken to. Jerry Chen and John Uyan are 17th and 18th, followed by Steve Carman and George Angelides in 20th place. In 21st position, we have got Carl Stroll with Ben Borman in 22nd, with Becky Ely Clark in 23rd, with Jules Lalonde in 24th place. And in 25th, we have got Daryl Kruger and Ethan Funk, and then it's Vinicius Goncalves and Mike Bell in 27th and 28th. On the 15th row of the grid, we've got Matt Overton and Christian Doge, with Oli Kolyalati and Alan Smith in 31st and 32nd places. And looking at the back of the field to round out the grid, and we've got in fact, that's the whole field of 32. I thought we had one more car in the field there, but 32 it is. And we don't have too long to go here until lights do go out. To my understanding, it will be a rolling start for the drivers. They're just in the garages at the moment, just doing their final setup changes. And apparently, someone's always lost their front splinter by the heads in the curb in the first 2 chicanes. So that's how lethal the curbs are around here. So that'll be one to look out for here. You can just see the front of the field just getting into their positions, doing their final setup changes to ensure they get all straight line speed, especially around here at Monza, one of the fastest circuits in the world. That Volvo at the front, that's the pace car. And yes, we are going that far back into 1981. Absolutely lovely machine in its own right. And just waiting for the rest of the field to get onto it. I think we're just waiting on Bradley Sellers and Mike Bell to make their way on there. Once they are on the circuit, then the pace lap can begin. And it looks like the pace lap has already begun. So it doesn't look like Bradley Sellers or Mike Bell got to the grid, so they'll have to start the race from the pit lane. Here we are then, through the Rettifilo chicane. You can just see how high the curbs are around here, and vitally important not to take too much damage coming out of that. And it'll be the Curva Grande that they'll be heading through. It is the 2 right-handers of Lesmo, and coming towards Ascari and the Curva Alboreto, or otherwise known as the Parabolica. You could just see there is a kick of spray coming out of the Rettifilo chicanes. just to know who is on what. Well, there is actually a variation in terms of tyres that the drivers have gone for, most of which have gone for dries. Steve Carman, George Angelides, Daryl Kruger, Vinicius Goncalves, and Christian Doge have all gone. Doja have gone for the wets. So just 5 drivers have gone for the wet tyres. And we'll see whether the wet tyres are the ones to be on to begin with. I would probably say the track will dry out in due course over the course of this. I don't expect it to be damp all the way through. It does say 43 laps on the timing page, but lap 1 is the pace lap, so we just exclude that. It'll be a 42 lap affair for these to ensure we have the 250 kilometre event. So here through the right-hander, you just see how different the right-hander of Lesmer is. It's actually a lot quicker through there, but now of course it's slower these days with the current configuration and more spray being kicked up out of there. So it feels like it's drier in some places and wet in others, or damp at least anyway. So those on the wet tyres will just need to make sure they want to be using the wet patches just to ensure they don't overheat their tyres in the early stages. But of course, there is a long way to go. The race is not won on the first lap, but it could be where you lose it. And you can see the pace guidance in the foreground. You could see a few drops of rain coming down now. Looking at the track temperature, 29 degrees, 9 degrees air temperature, a wetness of 0 to 40%. Well, it's definitely wet of some degree. We'll see if remain wet during the course, maybe like the first 10 or 15 laps or so here. But at the end of the day, we're here to race. Dan Kirby knows the challenge that is ahead in his Porsche 935 K3, ahead of Nicholas Kirsten in the Ferrari 512 BBLM. Will it be the prancing horse coming away with victory here at Monza? We'll soon find out. The pace car will peel off into the pit lane, and it'll be 42 laps of action here at the Temple of Speed, home of the Formula 1 Italian Grand Prix. But for now, it's the machinery of 1981 to take to the stage and find out who will come out on top. It was Eduardo Beninca at Daytona. It was Alessandro Smeraldi at Mugello. Who will it be here at Monza? We shall see as the safety car goes into the pit lane, and the drivers will wait patiently for the lights to go green, and that'll be the clear for them to race. And in the Porsche is Dan Kirby, in the Ferrari is Nicholas Kirsten, and it's Dan Herlock in the BMW, and we are underway. You can just see Dan Kirby pulling clear over Herlock, who's got the jump on Kirsten at the start. He's into second place briefly, but it could all change by the time they get to the Rettifilio chicane, and it's Kirby who takes out the early lead. And see drivers going through the chicane there. That looked like Kirsten, who just went through the first part of it, but rejoined. And you can see how easy it is to slide. That's where some of the damp patches are. Most of these are on dry tyres, remember. I mentioned 5 drivers who are on wet. The highest of those on the wet tyres, that is Daryl Kruger, who's running in 21st position. No dramas for him yet. There is a yellow flag in sector 1. That's gone away quite quickly. As we look further back down the field, that is Daryl Kruger. Oh, someone has stopped as well at the De La Rocha chicane. I don't know who that is. It might be Valtteri De Bruyne who's just stopped there, unfortunately. So he's clearly picked up an issue, and the field are just doing their utmost to get through the first part of the lap unscathed. But it is Dan Kirby who leads the way. Dan Herlock in second place. It's Nicholas Kirsten in third. You can see Herlock go through on Kirby before they get to Ascari, unless they've already gone through Ascari. But either way, Herlock has taken the lead over Dan Kirby, with Nicholas Kirsten in third position still at and there's someone off at the Ascari chicane. We'll find out who it is in a moment. So far, no dramas for the leaders on dry tyres. It is still rather damp out there. Valtteri De Bruyne is out of the race already. Mike Bell and Bradley Sellers didn't even take to the start, unfortunately. So both of those are gone as well, which means we're down to 29 runners with lap 1 already in the books. So who is high up? So Maximilian Petraffi is up in his class in the 2LSP GR5 AM. It is Besink in the U2L SP GR5 Pro. And it's Christian Doge in the U2L SP GR5 AM class as well. So they are focusing on just making sure. I've just been told that Kruger is off the circuit as well. So Kruger with a lot of work to do after being on the wets, if you remember. So he's beginning to struggle to find grip around the circuit, especially. It's still raining as well around the circuit. So I think whilst the rain is coming down, the track is still, the cars are still dispersing the water. You can just see that's Herlock and Kirby going through the second part of Lesmo, and Kirby had to slam on the brakes to ensure he didn't run into Herlock. And Kirsten, in third position, is on the tail of him on the run-up towards the Scari. Eduardo Beninca in fourth place, Magnus Dahlgren in fifth, and it's Johnny Gutierrez in sixth position, not too far back. Gutierrez just over a second off Dahlgren at this point. And it's Maximilian Petrovsky over a second behind in P7. Ilko Busink in 8th. Oliver Day in 9th overall. Is John Uyan in 10th position. But now we're having a look at the replay of what... This is Nicholas Kirsten going through the first chicane. He got very close to Dan Herlock. And he slammed on the brakes and knew he wasn't going to make the corner. So he had to go through the gravel trap at the first part of Rettifilio. Back to live images, and Herlock is in the lead now over Kirby, but that could change in an instant at any time. Kirsten just keeping them in sight, likewise for Beninca. And Field just in simply just looking to settle in. Further back, we're looking in the U2L SPGR5 AM class. That is Benjamin Letalic and Becky Ely Clark fighting over second place in that respective category. You can just see someone having a quick slide coming out of there. That looked like that. I wonder if it was Ross Smith who was in front of it, because Letalic and Ely Clark are behind Ross Smith. Here is Ross Smith, who is just meticulously making his way through the... We look at Ollie Koyanati, who is running in 8th position in class at the moment. They're doing a super job, just keeping his car on the circuit at all times. Comes out of Lesmond, takes a gorgeous grandson, I have to say, in the background there. They've probably got the best view in the house, and they're still one of the best views. But Benjamin Letalic is in front of Becky Ely Clark at the moment. Ely Clark continuing her impressive start to the season and got a yellow flag in set to 2. We'll find out shortly what has triggered that. We understand it might be Carl Stroll who's tumbling down the order. Actually, he's just fallen behind Vinicius Goncalves as well, so it may have been him that brought that brief yellow flag out. Down the back straight towards the Parabolica, and Ely Clark has gone through. He's got a nose in front of Benjamin Letalic now. The second place in class. Good move from Becky, making her move up the order. Oh, and that's a car who has spun on the curb there. It might be Ross Smith. Yeah, he's tumbling down the order as well. Yeah, so he's just fallen behind Alan Smith now, as Ross Smith. And it's Tony McCoffin who's on the tail of him as they go down the pit straight. And behind Tony McCoffin is JT Tammy. A very spicy battle raging here towards the Rettifilio chicane. And that's someone that looked like Kirsten, who just went through the first chicane there. I might be wrong, but that just tells you how tricky it is round here at Monza. That's the thing, if you know you're not going to make the corner, do not ride over the curb, because that is expected to cause some form of damage, and just go through the gravel. We'll find out exactly who it is, and we look at Ross Smith, I think, who's just coming back through. He's fighting it out with Alan Smith, who's in front of him at the moment, but he's got Benjamin Letalic on his tail and Tony McCoffin. Oh, and that's a little twitch there for McCoffin on the exit. And behind him is JT Tammy, both of which are in the same class as each other. But at the moment, just doing their utmost to keep themselves on the circuit. Valtteri De Bruyne is back in the race now, albeit 2 laps down on everyone else. So he's going to have to hope for more drivers to fall by the wayside to make his way back up the order. Here we are with the leaders then in picture. That is Dan Herlock, Dan Kirby, and Nicholas Kirsten in 1st, 2nd and 3rd places. We've got a driver tumbling down the order a little bit now. We'll find out more on who that is. Meanwhile, we've got a replay to show you. I think there's someone right in the... Oh, you could just see... So you could just see... Oh, and that's a very strange way how that curb has caught whoever it was out there. That tells you about how much damage those curbs can do one way or another. And apparently someone had damaged their front splitter going through there. And it wouldn't surprise me if we see a few more mistakes like that during the course of this one. But it is Herlock who leads, Kirby in 2nd place, Kirsten in 3rd. Dahlgren's dropping back from these, around about 5 seconds off this group. But he is 4 seconds clear over his nearest rival, Gutierrez. And this is Maximilian Petrovsky at turn number 1 at the Rettifilo. So well, this is a separate incident from what we saw just now. That's a bit of the splitter going off Petrovsky's car there. He's back on the circuit now, and I'm sure the downforce levels of that won't particularly have done any good whatsoever. Becky Ely Clark has been off the circuit as well, and Dan Kirby has the fastest up of the race so far with a 1:55.0. This replay is Becky Ely Clark going off the... So that was Ely Clark going off the circuit. There was all sorts of pandemonium going on further behind her. And it was Jules Lalonde who was the one spin there in the silver livery, and you could just see more cars just piling in behind. And Ross Smith going through on this bunch, and he just accepts the invitation. That's probably the biggest gift he's going to have all season for Ross Smith. But you take them as you do. Meanwhile, these 3 haven't put a foot wrong since the start. You can just see Kirby getting on the curb so heavily out of the second part, and the rain is still teeing down at the moment. I have to say, there's more rain coming down than we first thought. We thought it was going to be drying out before the race had started, but that tells you pretty much on how much the drivers are struggling. This is over at turn 1. This is one of the Mustangs going through here. Is that Tony McCall? Oh, dearie me, and everyone's having to take evasive action. That's Benjamin Letalic, who you can see in that green number 10 going through turn number 1. So that's not doing any good whatsoever. And there was another car that spun behind him, which I didn't pick up on who that was. But the conditions are getting worse at the moment. The drivers need to think about how to consume fuel, because I'd imagine they'll be consuming less fuel compared to how they anticipated for a dry race, I suppose. But there we see Kirby in 2nd place. The darker red car behind him is Nicholas Kirsten in 3rd position. Herlock is beginning to pull away now 1.1 seconds clear. And we see further down the field Tony McCoffin and Alan Smith fighting over 4th place in class. So they are in a battle of their own, these 2. McCoffin in the green car, Alan Smith in the black and red one. Coming through, there's a car running wider on the exit of the first part of Lesmo further back. That must have been Jules Lalonde, I think, again. So Lalonde is continuing to struggle at the moment in this race. He's so far off his counterparts in his own class. The nearest one ahead of him is Eduardo Beninca, who's dropped down to 8th position since we spoke about him. It looks like George Angelides has gone off the circuit as well, hence why he's down to 26th position. I think he was in 20th place at one point, was George. But here we are on the exit of Ascari. He slides, can't correct it. And as soon as he got on the curb, he couldn't do much more than just that. And he's just waiting for a gap in the traffic before he decides It's just rejoining now is George Angelidis, so that's him down the field there. And we're back to the battle between McCuffin and Smith in 4th and 5th places. Down the pit straight, so drivers complete their 5th half, and McCuffin spins. Oh, takes Smith with him. McCuffin and Smith come together. McCuffin lost it on the pit straight and collected the rear of Alan Smith. Smith rejoins, but surely McCuffin has taken a significant amount of damage as a consequence. We'll get a replay, and it looks like Benjamin Letalic has gone into the pit lane for damage. Does Smith run into I think he runs into him, actually. I think that's Smith going into McCuffin first. McCuffin hits in the Armco, and as he getting back onto the circuit, collected the left rear corner of Smith, who did very well not to take out anyone else. But their races have been heavily compromised. It just takes one error. It just takes one mistake for your race to just simply fall apart. And that's a car spinning as well on the exit. So that looks like Sheila Lond, who has spun again on the exit. We'll get more on that in a moment. Well, whilst we are seeing the conditions continue to deteriorate, Dan Kirby is still posting 1 minute 54s. The fastest lap time we've seen so far in this one is 1 minute 54.6. So Kirby is still able to cope with these conditions very, very well. Is now on the tail of Herlock for the lead. 9 seconds between Herlock in the lead and Dahlgren in 4th. And it looks like McCuffin has stopped on circuit, and he is out of the race, so he goes no further, joining Mike Bell and Bradley Sellers, who didn't even start this one. And Letalic is still in the pit lane for an extortionate amount of time. Ben Borman has gone through ahead of him, and Borman will move up another place at the expense of McCuffin, who's gone no further here. So here's a replay of McCuffin, we believe, just stopping on circuit after the contact he had. Yeah, the moment he attempted to go through the first part of Les Moe, he wasn't going to make it, so it was wise for him to just stop safely by the barrier. You can see the leads are almost coming up to back mark as well. Ben Bowman, Benjamin Letalic and Roberto De Bruyne are already lapped in this race. That's Carl Stroll, who is ahead of them in 26th position. From about 13 seconds off Brian Polbert Reyes. Here is another replay of JT Tammy going for a spin. I did say it was Sheila Lond earlier. I was incorrect with that. It is JT Tammy who had gone round. Everyone is spinning at the moment, apart from the leaders, of course. I don't think the leaders have put anything wrong, or put foot wrong all race so far. But looking at the class leaders, it is obviously Herlock in the lead. You can see in your picture. And it's Ilko Busink who's in the lead in the UTL SPGR5 class. And it's John Uyan, 11 seconds clear in the lead in the 2L SPGR5 AM class. And in the UTL SPGR5 AM class, it is Christian Douge, who's 12 seconds clear now over Matt Overton, who's also a dozen seconds clear over Carl Stroll, who's just been lapped by the leaders. So a lot has played out so far here at Monza, and it looks like Nicholas Kirsten's dropped back considerably now from the two Dans. This is Ben Borman going off at Ascari. That's Ben Borman there. That's him going wider in the blue car. I just wonder as well whether, with the amount of drivers missing the chicanes, whether there will be some penalties being given out later on. Because we don't like seeing drivers having to corner cut, but we understand why we see them going off the circuits to ensure that they make the corner. If there are more cars coming up behind them, they want to make sure they essentially don't rejoin into the path of them or try to go through a corner, which they don't, and then they collect another car. You just see Dan Herlock on the brakes, just twitching his way through ahead of Kirby. It's a yellow flag again in sector 2. Kirby running wide at Ascari corner, still chasing Herlock, and that's going to give. It's still going to give Nicholas Kirsten some encouragement to close in, and it looks like Magnus Dahlgren is the one that brought out the yellow flag, and he was running in 4th place. He was running in 4th position, was Dahlgren, before having his moment. We're going to see why. It was Ollie Kayalati who ran into Dahlgren at the first part of Les Moe. Or does he rejoin safely? That was very close there from the 8-9. It's quite a blind corner as well, is Lesmo, because you don't know what is going on ahead of you when you're entering through there. But Magnus Dahlgren is now back on circuit in 8th position behind Ilko Busink. But back at the front there is Herlock and Kirby. It's Kirsten in 3rd place. And Ollie Larsen, despite the tap he had with Magnus Dahlgren, is in 4th position, but he's now over 20 seconds off the lead. Looking on further down the field to see if there are any other battles raging. Daryl Kruger, who started the race on the wets, is in 14th place, so I think he started to make inroads now as well. He's done a lap time of 2 minutes 0.2, which is quicker than what the other wet weather runners are doing, and quicker than some of what the dry runners are doing as well. So he's just clearly playing the long game right now as we speak. We're right on board with Dan Kirby chasing after Dan. Like you see, the amount of activity he's having to handle with the steering wheel. And just to correct the slide, we've got Becky Ely-Clark in the pit lane now, in 13th position. Whether she may decide to go on the wets, considering how much it's been raining, is she taking that wild gamble at the moment? It's a very tough one to call because it's dry in some parts and wet in others. You need to make the right call at the right time. And Elko Busink running in P7, punching above his weight right now. 4 seconds clear. And JT Tammy's run about 38 seconds behind Busink. That's almost like a pit stop, of which Busink has got in hand over Tammy. So this has been a very encouraging start to the race for Busink. Basically the dark horse of the race so far, because he is on the threshold of catching some of the 2L SPGR5 cars. And he's making the most of the conditions already. Now the last lap he posted was a 158.2. The fast lap he has done is a 157.9. So he's doing a consistent run of laps at the moment, which explains why he's been able to build out the gap he has done so far. We are around about a quarter of the way through here at Monza, the 250 kilometres of Monza, of the VWSC Historic Championship of 1981. And you can see getting the power down out of the corner. You don't want to be too greedy on the throttle. There's no traction control in these machines, and Busink is having to correct the slide. And who was that just went through there? I don't think that was a driver went through him on position. I think that was a back marker that went back through on Busink there. And Magnus Dahlgren is the latest driver to come into the pit lane. He was on the dries before he came in. Now he's gone on to the wets. So I wonder if Becky Ely-Clark went out on the wets as well. We're going to see. It's Christian Gold. He had to correct the slide on the apex there. He was very nearly taken out actually. Now Becky Ely-Clark, who was in the pit lane, we were speaking about, she's gone back out on wets. So I think we are beginning to see drivers making the switch from dries to wets at this stage of the race. Whether we stay with wets from now until the end, that's anyone's guess. But it is very, very hard to call at this stage. And looking at the chat as well, hello to Mr. Reese in the chat, hope you are well. Let us know who you're rooting for here at Monza, and we'll give you a shout out during the course of this one. Plenty of time to go and a lot to change in this race so far. Dan Herlock, twice runner-up, and twice run-up in Daytona and Mugello. There was a car off as well at Lesmo. Well, Becky Ely-Clark has made the most of whoever it was that went off at the first part of Lesmo, and she's gone through. And it was Ross Smith, of all people, to have gone straight on at Lesmo 1. So I wonder he may feel the time is now for wet tyres to be fitted on. And we're going to see a replay of Smith going straight on here. And oh dear, he's gone off quite a long way actually. He was focusing more on the car in front than making the corner. And that's a heavy hit against the barrier there, nose first. And I think that will give him the inclination to just go into the pit lane. Not in for repairs, but to get wet tyres on. And Basink is in the pit lane now, and it's a convenient time for him because he built out a cushion of over 40 seconds on JT Temi. So even if he does put wet tyres on, which I think are the tyres to be on now, he'll rejoin in the lead over JT Temi, no problem. And here we see Johnny Gutierrez and Ollie Kayalati in 4th and 5th. And giving themselves a good fight. You can see they're just tippy-toeing their way through the corners here. I think they know that these dry tyres are not the ones to be on. So they just see the sliding around, and the amount of grip is almost non-existent as they come out of there. JT Temi's got in front of Basink now, but I think with the amount of grip Basink will have, he should be able to close back in on these. He's been in the pit lane for a long time actually, and it looks like Alan Smith has gone through ahead of him into 3rd position in class, and off goes Kayalati from 5th place. That was a bad error by him. And is he going to rejoin ahead of Oliver Day, who's coming round in that orange machine? Oh, it was close. I think Day should have him on the back straight here. And we've had a change of lead overall because Dan Kirby is now ahead of Dan Herlock, and we're going to see why that has happened. Herlock has been off somewhere. We're going to find out where and how he's managed to do it. He's over at Ascari, or he was just twitching. It was almost similar to what Kayalati had earlier, but this one is on the exit of Ascari. So that's him taken to the escape road. Luckily it was tarmac there and not grass or gravel. But that error has cost him the lead overall. But I think that'll be the least of his worries right now, because he'll be thinking more about the weather and how the track is changing. This will be where Kirby goes through on Herlock. Herlock is still ahead by this point, but I think Kirby's going to get all the drive coming out of here towards the Retifilia. You can see the amount of grip he had, and the slipstream effect has helped Kirby go through just before the line. So Kirby is the new race leader here at Monza. Go back to live images to catch up on what we might have missed whilst watching that. But Kirby is ahead of Herlock, making their way. Kirby has gone through one of the back markers, as has Herlock, and we've got Ollie Kayalati, who's had another off, and this time it's for good. Out of the race goes Ollie Kayalati. It's been an eventful race, despite the fact that we've only had 12 laps of running. And we're going to see what has put the kibosh on his race here at Monza. He went over the curve, so that bit was fine. The second part, well, he was already losing it. Already losing it there, Kayalati. And he just decides to end it right there and then. So that's another retirement from this race. And we're looking at Kirby and Herlock again, still trying to make their way through back markers at the moment. And I'm hearing that Ross Smith has been off again. The man of took the curves too much, and the car behind him couldn't do anything. So Ross Smith will be kicking himself with that, and he may have stopped on circuit, judging by how leisurely. He's back on circuit now, but he was all right with that rejoin there. He knew about the traffic that was coming through. There's a lot of spray being kicked up, despite the fact that it may not be raining anymore. There's a dry line beam. There's a dry line kick emerging at the moment as the leads are coming towards the Ascari chicane. And Kirby and Herlock are heading through now. Kirby is just keeping his car on the circuit in all the right places. Herlock wants to try and get back of what he had lost not too long ago. It looks like Jules Lalonde has been in the pits. It looks like he's been in there for a long time now as well. He's not had Lalonde has had an eventful race so far. He's way down the field overall in 27th position. And judging by the static image that it's not raining, there's a bit of debris actually lying around in the gravel trap at the second part of Rettifilio. I wonder how many spare parts that they're going to be handing out by the end of this, because those curbs are not the driver's best friend so far. here at Monza. If it's not raining anymore, then that could potentially be bad news for those who have gone on wet, because the water's going to be dispersed as they go through. Those on the dries, they've basically saved themselves a pit stop, because they'll probably go onto another set of slicks later on. But had they gone onto the wets from the slicks, they'll need to come back in to put slicks on. But it depends on how much time they've lost during the course of the race being on the wrong tyres. There's that to factor in as well. You can see Kirby and Herlock nose to tail. So the two leaders are on the slicks at the moment still. The highest driver in the field, who's on wets, is Daryl Kruger in 9th position, but he's been on the wets since the start. In all respect to Daryl Kruger, he's saved himself a pit stop in another way compared to how others have done. And Oliver Day is the latest to come into the pit lane. He was running in 5th place, I think, in class. Well, it might have been 4th, because he was in that battle with Ollie Kayalati before Kayalati had those 2 offs before finished his race on the spot. So we'll see more pit lane activity in due course. I'm just curious of what Day is going to go on here, because he was on the slicks just now. It looks like he's staying on the slicks. I think he's envisaged the fact that the rain has passed and the track is going to get dry. And here we see the leaders coming through more back markers. That is Vinicius Goncalves and Ethan Funk. They're running in 14th and 15th places. They're in different classes, those two. George Angelidis, at the moment in the 2L SPGR5 AM class, is running in 6th position. This is the closest battle we've got for you. Having said that, well, I say battles because whilst these two are fighting for the lead, the two of which they're lapping are fighting for a position overall, but they are in different classes to each other. Nevertheless, it's a battle of any kind. We will see Kirby and Herlock are heading through the De La Rocha chicane once more. The 15th time in this race. Oliver Day is showing that he is still in the pit lane, and that's a spin in the background there for Ethan Funk. He's falling behind George Angelidis after that error there, so it's a shame for Funk on that occasion. And we'll see a replay of how he's managed to do that. He's had a slide to begin with, and he took the tight line because of it, and he just couldn't correct it. Spin for Funk has dropped him down to 15th position, so he's lost 3 places since that spin. The next driver behind him is Ryan Polbert Reyes, who's around about 1.5 seconds off his place. Just had another yellow flag as well since that. We'll find out more on what caused that yellow flag. But back to the leader of Dan Kirby with Dan Herlock right in his tail. It's almost like he just poked out from behind, actually, did Dan Herlock. That's how close he is onto the rear of Dan Kirby. And the latest we can give you with this replay . We've just got a that is that's Johnny Gutierrez, who had the spin at De La Rocha, hitting the curb and causing damage, which will not help Gutierrez's handling one bit. And there you see Herlock, closest he's been since the error he made on the exit of Ascari, is right in the wheel tracks of Dan Kirby. But the problem is, if he goes for it offline, that's where the wet part of the circuit is. So he's going to have to maybe wait until there is a better opportunity for him to just go for it here. Oh, you can see the back marker just about getting out of the way of the leaders there. That might have been John Chalvers who was getting out of the way at that point. Now it's Daryl Kruger who's been lapped by the leaders, the highest driver in the field on wets, as the field continue to make their way through. I'm astonished by how quickly Kirby and Herlock have been able to just plough their way through these back markers. We've got more pit stops going on. Johnny Gutierrez is the latest to come in, which is no surprise because the damage he picked up by going over the curb. And John Uyen, the leader in the 2L SPGR5 AM class, is in. Wasn't too far in front over Maximilian Petrafki in his own class battle. We are still with the leaders of Kirby and Herlock. Herlock with the fast lap of the race on the previous tour as well. The 1 minute 51.2. So the dry tyres are the ones to be on now. And Ryan Pulbert-Reyes, who's just pitted, has had a moment of his own. And he was never going to stop that. He was never going to stop that at the first part of Lesmo. And someone else had gone off in the background further on at Lesmo. Didn't quite see who that was, but that was Ryan Pulbert-Reyes, who came back on circuit after a pit stop. And look at the pit lane activity. They know that the wets are not to be on. Herlock and Kirby are both in. Kirsten is also in. A little bit further down the pit lane is Kirsten compared to Kirby and Herlock. He was run about 3 to 4 seconds off these, so we'll see how quickly he can actually get back out. Herlock won't be in front of Kirby by the time they leave. But now we're looking at Maximilian Petroffi, who's up in 4th place overall. He's on the slicks, as he has been since the start. He might have saved himself a pit stop, but that comes down to maybe how much fuel he's saved in this early stage of the race. We are on lap 16. It does say 17, but that's because it's included the pace lap as far as R Factor 2 is concerned. Gutierrez is back in the pit lane again, and well, he's not exactly having the best time of it at the moment, is he? And Eduardo Beninca, who's a long way off the class leaders right now of Kirsten, Kirby and Herlock, looks to be consigned to 4th place or below. But there we see Petrofsky. Is he going to take the lead from Kirsten, Kirby and Herlock? They've been in the pit lane for a long time, those three. And Petrofsky could be the one taking the lead, not only in the 2L SPGR5 AM class, but overall. No, he's in as well. Now, JT Tammy is the next driver behind, who's coming through the Parabolica in the U2L SPGR5 class, the leader of that. I'd imagine he's probably going to go for pit road as well, but we shall see. No, he's carried on. He's carried on, has Tammy. So we could well see a change of leader here, with JT Tammy going through. And he's into the lead overall. So JT Tammy leads. Into finishes John Calvers, who's the next driver behind on circuit. Here he's coming round towards the pit straight now. Could he be going through into 2nd position? And Ross Smith, of all people, who has been in the wars a few times already, has somehow managed to get himself up in P7. He's now into 2nd place, is Ross Smith, overall. So not only is he the leader in the 2L SPGR5 AM class, but he's also in 2nd position overall. We've been treated to a very, very entertaining affair here, with all sorts of pit stops, drivers going off circuit left, right and centre. And there's still a whole lot more to come. We haven't even got to halfway yet, and we've seen so much. Herlock and Kirby are back out on circuit, and Herlock has got the jump on Kirby. That's how far Kirby is behind him. 7 seconds, in fact, between the pair of them, of Herlock and Kirby. So Kirby's going to have to really dig deep to get back what he feels is the overall lead. At least he's in front of Kirsten, but Dan Herlock somehow was able to produce a much quicker pit stop compared to his rivals. What kind of lap times are we going to be seeing from here on in, now that the track is continuing to dry? JT Tammy is still carrying on his way. You can still see the spray being kicked up. And we've been told that Kirby's pit stop, or Herlock's pit stop, was 12 seconds quicker than what Kirby's was. And that explains why he's in the lead by quite a comfortable margin. Tammy's in the pits now from the lead. Will Smith decide to do the same? Well, he's just going through Parabolica now. It's Ross Smith continuing to twitch his way through. Ethan Funk is also in. And will we see Ross Smith lead overall? No, he won't, because he's going in the pit lane. It would have been nice for him to lead that, but no, it looks like he needed some fuel, and that's a slide there from one of the Mustangs just in front of Dan Herlock there. I wonder if that might be, is that Matt Overton, who's just about to be lapped by the leader? Not 100% sure. Well, was the leader early. So that is Cole Stroll, who's in the pit lane at the moment. One of many, in fact. Petrucci, Gonçalves, Angelidis and Ross Smith are also in. Matt Overton's in the pit lane. So it wasn't Overton who was in the way of Herlock that time. It was one of the other Mustangs who was staying out of the way. But Herlock is now back into the lead of the race here. That was Benjamin Letalic, who was the one just being lapped by the leader. But Kirby's getting the gap down already on Herlock. It was around about 7 seconds by the time they came out of the pit lane. It's now back down to 3.5. Further back, see, it's Kirsten in third, followed by a strong race actually is Kirsten. We did see him go through the chicane at the start, but remarkably he's been able to keep up with Herlock and Kirby throughout the whole of this, despite the circumstances. Eduardo Beninca has closed in a little bit more now. He's beginning to come into his zone after falling behind earlier on. And Magnus Dahlgren, who we saw having that spin earlier, he's made his way back to 5th, and there we see Ilko Busink putting. He's just, I think that's Oliver. It's not Oliver Day. He has to be one of the back markers, which Busink is just about to go by. But Becky Ely Clark isn't too far behind in the lead in the battle for the lead in the U2L SPGR5 class between Busink and Ely Clark. You could just see Busink getting held up now, and that's only going to encourage Ely Clark to close in. The gap was 12 seconds at the beginning of the lap. It is still 12 seconds at this moment in time, but if Busink continues to get held up by the back marker, then he's going to find it really difficult. You can just see he came off line, but the problem is it's wet offline. So he has to just lift off a little bit just to ensure he got through there safely. But you can just see he's dropped back, and this is losing Busink time. Johnny Gutierrez isn't too far off, but Johnny Gutierrez is in a different class to Busink anyway. There's a brief yellow flag in sector 3. We'll get more on that in a moment as to who brought that out. It wasn't a long yellow flag, in all honesty. Herlock's lead is 3.5 seconds, now 3 seconds. As you can see, the gap is coming down. I wonder if Herlock may be getting stuck in traffic again, because it was 3.5 seconds at one point. Now it just drastically decreased. You can see he's just continuing to manage the situation with his fuel, I suppose, because he needs to try and get to the end of the race. If you looked at the timing of when he came in, the target for him is to go to the end. It's going to be really tight, I think. It's going to come down to who will be able to manage it. And this is Maximilian Petrovsky, who spins right in front of one of the Lanciers, I think it was. And that was another one that nearly ran into him actually before Petrovsky rejoined the circuit. Maximilian Petrovsky running in 16th place. I think the Lancia that went by him was Ethan Funk, who had only just pitted. Ethan Funk running there in 15th overall and 5th in class for him. We'll see. I don't think anyone's in the pits at the moment. Ben Baum has just come back out now. He's running in 25th position. He's running about 8 seconds behind the nearest man, who's had a race to forget, in all honesty, Jules Lalonde, who is nowhere near towards where Johnny Gutierrez is, in 8th position. That's the nearest of challenging him. The latest replay we're going to have is over. This is Ethan Funk's view of Petrovsky's spin on the exit parabolica. It wasn't as close as we first thought. Traffic did very well to stay out of the way of the oncoming traffic, and the track is continuing to dry more and more, so we'll see more overtakes now that the track is dry. Now there's no more rain hitting the circuit. Track temperature now here at Monza is still 29 with 9 degrees air temperature. Looks like Herlock has got this one under control now, able to manage his fuel. I think there are parts of the circuit where he is going quicker, and other times where he feels he can afford to just back off. That is the aim of Herlock's race now, is if you know you're not going to pit again, you need to try and save fuel at some point. That'll be what is running through his mind. John Uyan, I will give a mention, who is the leader in the 2L SPGR5 AM class. He's running at the moment in terms of overall in 10th place, and he's still on the lead lap. John. The next driver behind him is JT Tammy, who's in a different class to where he is. But the nearest rival to John at the moment is Ross Smith, who is around about 30 seconds off him now. So John Union in complete control, dominating proceedings there. But John Union is going through turn 1 to lap one of the back markers. This is Maximilian Petrovsky, who is continuing to have a tough time of it. This time at Lesmo 1. Tries, I think for the moment he knew he was going to go for the spin, he tried to do the 360 so that he rejoined quicker, but he's having to go across the grass for a little bit of lawn mowing. The gap between Herlock and Kirby has come down to 2.5 seconds. Kirby doing a fine job as we see John Uyan going through Lesmo 1 ahead of Ross Smith, who is getting the gap down a little bit but not significantly at this rate. Matt Overton in the U2L SPGR5 AM class is leading the way over Christian Doge. 9 seconds is the margin between the pair of them. Carl Stroll making up the top 3 there. Have a look at Uyam. There's a yellow flag in sector 2, we'll come to that in a moment, and Kirby's closed the gap down a little bit more. It was 2.1 seconds when we went through Lesmo. And it was Daryl Kruger who brought out the yellow flag. Who had been on wets earlier. I think he's still on wets, thinking of it. Looking at the timing page now, yeah, he is still on wets, interestingly, as Daryl Kruger, but it's no surprise to me. Petrovsky has been off again for the 3rd time in the spaces of many laps, actually. And Kruger has had enough of his own. And if I was Kruger, I'd just come into the pit lane and get the tyres changed, because the likelihood is that it's not going to rain again. And it's been that sort of race so far. Sometimes fortunes can change in it. Oh, and that's a car just spinning around when he gets at the last corner there, before Herlock and Kirby had gone by. It's still a rain around about within the 30-mile radius, I would say, of Monza, so let's not rule out the fact that it may rain towards the end, but that doesn't mean to say that drivers will be on wets again before this race is over. It's just the track won't be. Oh, that's a car barrel rolling his way through turn number 1 at the Rettifilo. Didn't quite see who it was, just caught it at the back end of Kirby going through Rettifilo and entering the Curva Grande. We'll get more on that in a moment, but Kirby is really, really on the tail now of Herlock in the fight for the lead. And because Kirsten is also getting on with the job, he posted a 1 minute 48.2 not too long ago, and the last lap time he did was around about the same as what Kirby did, and considerably quicker than what Herlock had produced. Rada Beninka is dropping back now from Kirsten. The gap is to 17 seconds between the pair of them. The yellow flag in sector 2. Oliver Day continues to keep his car on the circuit. Johnny Gutierrez has moved in front of Elko Busink for 7th place. Doesn't change the situation in class, but it does in the overall standings. So Oliver Day will, Johnny Gutierrez will be wanting to close in on Oliver Day in the near future. Ilka Basing has got a couple of margin of 18 seconds over Becky Ely Clark, with JT coming around the top 3 in the U2L SPGR5 category. Now on lap 23 and into the second half of this one. There are the leaders. That is Kirby on the tail of Herlock. Slides. See the pressure being soaked up on him by Kirby corner by corner. There are more back markers which they'll be heading through. I think that is someone that has already been lapped in this race before the likes of JT Tammy, the next driver who hasn't been lapped in this. These are approaching them very, very soon. They'll be coming at them at a rate of knots, judging by the pace at which they've been able to produce so far. Out of Lesmo 1. Lesmo 2. No mistake from Herlock at the moment. You can see Kirby losing all that time in the pit lane. He's been able to claw it back in the battle for the lead again. This is great stuff, and don't rule out Kirsten either, because he'll want these two to fight it out, which I think is inevitable. It's just, when does Kirby decide to go for it? Where is the best place, and when is the best time to make his move as they go through on one of the back markers just ahead of him? I wonder if that might have been Ben Borman. He's been lapped for the second time in this race. And just to let you know that there was that Daryl Kruger gone off the circuit? I don't know, but Christian Doge is in the pit lane now. Probably to switch from wets to slicks. I think he's... Well, no, he is on slicks. But either way, it's been that sort of race here at Monza, with drivers just continuing to struggle, some of them anyway, whereas the leaders have been absolutely giving it the roll. Fast up of the race from Nicholas Kirsten on the last lap, 1 minute 48.0, 2 seconds quicker than Kirby, and 1.7 nearly quicker than Dan Herlock. Kirsten is really coming into his zone. Oh, that's a car going off at De La Rocha. He's going to catch the barrier. Now, who was that caught the barrier there on in the foreground? We'll find out in due course. But that was a very, very heavy hit into the tyre barrier. Been told it's Matt Overton who's gone straight on in the Lotus, and he got tagged from behind. Got touched from the side, my apologies. Was that Dan Herlock that ran into him? It might be Dan Herlock that ran into Overton. If that's the case, that could have a massive say on the final race result. Either way, you can see how many cars there are around the back straight towards Parabolic at the same time. So Dan Herlock was the one that ran into Matt Overton. So there is a rule in terms of getting through back markers. They're not necessarily obliged to get out of the way, but they are required to just essentially use their own common sense when leaders come up behind it. Ooh, as I say, Dan Herlock tried to take his line too soon into De La Rocha. He tried to cut on the racing line and just didn't leave enough space for Matt Overton to get into that. So there's no doubt to my mind there's going to be an investigation with that. There we see Herlock and Kirby continuing to filter their way past the back markers. Is that Ross Smith that's just coming up to the lap now? I think it might well be. We'll get more on that in a moment. Either way, we've gone through now on Becky Ely. I think it was Becky Ely Clark actually, who's been brilliant in this race so far. So it wasn't Ross Smith, my apologies, although it hadn't been too long before he was lapped by the leaders again. John Uyan is the next to get out of the way of the leaders. That was someone else actually who's already been lapped in this one, and that might have been the case. But sooner or later, John Uyan will be lapped. He's on too far off. Eduardo Beninca is in the pit lane, which is interesting because it wasn't too long ago since he came in, and he's going to lose an extortionate amount of time. To our understanding, Magnus Dahlgren is still on wet tyres, which Sink and Ely Clark are still also on the wets. I'm amazed they've been able to keep it on the circuit. Having said that, JT Tammy has just got by Becky Ely Clark for position, so that might be the confirmation to Becky that she needs to come in for slicks, unless she's trying to bridge out the stint for when she comes in for fuel. That's what she'll be doing. Well, she's in the pits now, is Becky. So this pit stop will take her to the end of the race. Clear track is what she'll want. We're back to the battle between Kirby and Herlock, and it looks like Kirby's got in front of him. Kirby is ahead of Herlock. We didn't see where the overtake was done, but you could just see Kirby trying to make his way through the traffic at the Curva Grande, likewise for Dan Herlock, but Herlock through the back markers, by the looks of things, has lost him the lead. So it gets worse for Herlock. We're going to see a replay of the overtake. This is on the pit straight where Kirby got the move done. Because Herlock, well, it almost looked like Kirby was allowed through there by Herlock, so it was nothing to do with the back markers at all. That is Kirby through safe and sound, but he's been going at it since the pit stops when he fell behind Herlock, and Kirsten is also on the tail of Herlock very, very soon now as well, because he's been setting fastest laps during the course of this latest stint. Magnus Dahlgren is now finally in the pit lane to go onto the slicks. So Besink is still on the wets, but for how long? Because there's no way on earth he's going to have all the grip in the world. The last lap he's just done was a 1:53.6, whereas when you look at the leaders who have been reducing 1:49 to 1:50, surely the wets aren't the ones to be on anymore. Becky Clark is still showing that she's in the pit lane. I think she may be back on circuit now. No, she's still in the pit lane at the moment, is Becky. So that tells you about how much time you can really lose here at Monza. Just see Kirsten in third place, 1 second behind Dan Herlock now. There's still a little bit more spray in there, so those on the wets will just want to find any wet patches left possible. This is Ethan Funk, who's going to have a spin at the Della Rocha. No harm done to him, although he's just reversed back into the far side into the Armco there. And Ollie, Kayan Larson that is joining chat, basically explaining about how lethal those curbs are. I agree more with you there, Ollie. It's really unfortunate. But best of luck at the next round, whichever one you'll be in next. But Herlock in second place, being chased by Nicholas Kirsten. The gap between the top three is less than 3 seconds. On lap 27, the leader coming round. We'll have 15 laps to go. Not too long left now. John Uyan continuing to lead the way in the 2L SP GL5 AM class. And 20 seconds clear over his nearest rival. That is Ross Smith. Magnus Dahlgren in the pit lane still. Becky Ely running 6th position in class right now. But she's lost a lot of time in pit lane. Felton De Bruyne is also in pit lane, but he's a long way off the others anyway. It's unfortunate what happened to him at the start. We didn't know what had happened to Felton De Bruyne at the beginning. We might be able to get more on that a little bit later. From what we've understood, it might have been a technical issue for Felton De Bruyne, which is why he's had to pull off the circuit. Then we see Kirsten and Herlock in second and third places. This isn't too far back. And looking at Oliver Day, who's now over a whole minute of Kirsten. He's in a fight of his own with Johnny Gutierrez in 4th position. Jules Lalonde, who's had a troublesome beginning to this, has come back up into 6th position in class at the moment, but he's a long way off Gutierrez. In fact, he's over a lap behind him. With Eduardo Beninca, who's already been in the pits again twice in this race, he's tumbled down to P17 overall. This has not been the best of races for Beninca by any means. You can just see Kirsten determined to just get the gap down a little bit more. The leaders are still coming up towards back markers. Besink is the next driver who hasn't been lapped yet. He's running in 6th place. He's doing a terrific job. He's run about 15 seconds off Johnny Gutierrez for position overall. Besink, I say that, has made his way into the pit lane, who had been on wets, but now's the time to be on the slicks. Herlock, oh, he had a little twitch there. The video. This is Kirsten, who is trying to put his car in different places compared to where Herlock is putting them. And all of this is allowing Kirby to just scamper off into the distance. Compared to what we saw earlier, when we saw pretty much every driver make a mistake and spinning off the circuit, they all seem to be keeping it on track now, which is good news. Sink is hoping that he can stay in the fight with JT Tammy. Alan Smith as well will go up into second position in class. The Sink's going to have to, with it all to do, is to come away with the class win. There are the leaders. Coming towards Ascari again. On 2 more back markers they are approaching. One of them is Steve Carman, and the other, I believe, is Ethan Funk, who are running in 13th and 14th places, respectively. Alan Smith is now in front of Besink now, so Besink will need to get on with it here. We see Herlock and Kirsten coming out of the last corner again. Kirsten decides to go for it at turn number 1. He might do exactly what Kirby did to Herlock when he just breezed on by, and that's exactly what he's doing here. So Herlock not fighting it. Not fighting it whatsoever. Dan Herlock on the approach to turn number 1. Kirsten on better tyres has made his way through into second place. Can he go after Dan Kirby for the lead? Velton De Bruyne's the latest to retire from the race. Just 27. Still going now. Matt Overton is the latest to come into the pit lane. He was on slicks earlier. Might have just come in for another set of slicks. But now the leaders are coming up towards back markers of Steve Carman and Ethan Funk. We're going to see a replay of George Angelidis going for a spin. He just locked the rears on the entry. It was enough to put the car off. But, does he rejoin safely? Yeah, he does. Yeah, he's fine though, it's George. There was traffic coming towards him, but he had enough ground anyway to rejoin. There is Kirsten in second place now. Can he go after Kirby for the win? He set the fast up of the race on the previous tour, won it 47.3. Kirby will come round to complete his 30th lap of the race. Just 12 to go here at the Templar Speed of Monza. These 1981 machines. The drivers are relishing the challenge for absolutely sure. Matt Overton, who has just been in the pit lane, is he's on 6 at the moment. The one driver who's still on wets actually is Daryl Kruger. He is still on wets. Surely he must be losing an extortion amount of time. Oh, and that's Kirsten going off circuit at turn 1. That's not the first time he's done that in this race. Was that him trying to go through on the back marker, but then couldn't? Might be able to get a replay of that. There is a yellow flag in sector 1, which we'll go back to in a moment. This is Kirsten going off the circuit. He was a long way off the back marker actually. I think he just missed his braking point. Couldn't get it slowed down. Could not get it slowed down. Because Kirsten. This is Ethan Funk, not for the first time, going for a spin at the De La Rocha. It's almost a carbon copy of what he'd done earlier there, Ethan. Rejoined safely. It's not going to find grip on the grass. You just see rejoins into the near where the leaders are. It always feels more damp at that part of the circuit here at Monza. So doing the their utmost just to stay on the circuit. And Dan Herlock, who was in the lead earlier, is now down to 3rd place behind Kirby and Kirsten. The gap between, well, I say Kirby and Kirsten are now fighting for the lead here because Kirsten's on the tail of Kirby. Are we going to see another change for lead here at Monza in the 250 kilometres? We shall see. And he hasn't got the straight line speed on the straight, actually, has Kirsten, so he's going to have to maybe try at a different point in the circuit to go through. The yellow flag is set to 2. Oliver Day has come into the pit lane for his latest set of tyres and fuel. Feels to me like the Ferrari's quicker in the corners, but on the straight, the Porsche seems to be quicker in the straight line. Basink, who was running in the lead before pitting, when about half a dozen laps ago, is running in 5th place behind Ben Borman. So Basink, looking at the times he's doing now, because it wasn't too long before he came in. What I will say though, the far side of the race, Magnus Dahlgren with a 1 minute 46.8, who is beginning to come alive, although a little bit too late in terms of being towards the front. But this is a very encouraging pace he's been able to produce. He didn't do it on the last tour, he must have done it like the last one before that. But nevertheless, it is encouraging to say the least. But there we see Kirby and Kirsten. More pit lane activity. Jerry Chen is in. And Ross Smith is also in. JT Tammy has also come into the pit lane. Now we're going to see a replay of Ilko Basink go off the circuit into the barrier. That's not going to do him too good. That was a bad error there by Basink. Now we're seeing George Angelidis going through. This is on Ben Borman, I believe, if I'm right to believe that, although he just twitched and gone straight on. Now, is that a track limits violation for George Angelidis? We'll find out soon enough. And this is Alan Smith at Ascari. Well, the fact that Kirsten didn't go into the lead ahead of Kirby could explain why he's pitted in, because he's in the pits now. John Gutierrez and John Uyan are also in. That should allow Max Petrafki to go through into the top 3 positions. So it's going to come down to a battle of the pit crews now. And now, oh, that's a car off at the first part of Lesmo. Who was that went off there? Right. Find out soon enough who it was on the replay in a moment. But that was not a good sight for whoever it was that went into the barrier. Quite hard, actually. Alan Smith, Jerry Chen and Steve Carman are in the pit lane now. This is a terrible situation, actually, because we can see cars pitted in the boxes. Could this cause a hindrance? So that was Basink who had to reverse in order for him to get out of the pit lane because it was that busy. So it's going to be vitally important for the leaders to ensure they don't get held up by any of the traffic, and this could cause a situation here now because you can see Kirby and Herlock making their way into the pit lane, and Kirsten, who's just pitted, really now has to get the hammer down. Did he lose time in the pit lane in all the traffic that was there? I really hope not, but I fear that it could well be the case. There is Kirsten, who doesn't look like he was hindered in the pit lane earlier. Although that is Dan Kirby and Dan Herlock who we're looking at right now. So these are live images at 2 different points on the circuit as to where Kirby and Herlock are. Oh, and that's someone coming out of the pit. Was that Alan Smith coming out of the pit lane? It might well have been. But whoever that was that came in, well, very, very nearly hindered him which could have caused all sorts of problems further back if they collided. You can see Kirsten is coming out of Ascari, and he isn't too far off. And even when he does get round here, Kirby and Herlock will need to get those tyres up to... will want to get those tyres up to temperature, whereas Kirsten's will already be up to temperature. Kirsten's pit stop was 93 seconds long. Herlock and Kirby. Kirby and Herlock's pit stops are considerably quicker than what Kirsten's does, but I think Kirsten is getting up to speed. And Kirsten's got him. So Kirsten is ahead of Kirby for second place, but Herlock has got the jump on both of them. So that quicker pit stop there for Herlock has got him in front of Dan Kirby for the lead. So the battle really is on with 9 laps remaining here at Monza. See Kirsten. Oh, that's so close between Kirsten and Kirby. I thought Kirby was going to run into the rear of him on the approach there, considering how tricky it is in these conditions here. So as far as the pit stops were concerned, it was 76 seconds for Herlock, 81 seconds for Kirsten, and 84 for Kirby. For the amount of time they lost in the pit lane, it was 86 for Herlock, 93 for Kirsten, and 94 for Kirby. So that's the difference between Herlock leaping up from what was third before the pit cycle to now the lead. And these are all going to the end. There's no more worries in terms of fuel involved in these. It's a straight fight to the checker flag here at the 250 kilometres of Monza, 1981. Trufke. He's in the lead in his own class at the moment in the 2L SP GR5 AMS. Until now, because he's having to come into the pit lane. And it looks like John Union's going to go back in front of him here, because he's already been into the pit lane not too long ago. Ben Borman has got himself into the lead, but I'd imagine he needs to pit in before this race is over, because... And we're seeing the timing tower change considerably. But there we see Ben Borman going well so far in this. He was towards the back end of the class a little bit earlier, but he's got himself involved in the fight. So far, overall, he's now up into 8th place, and it's Magnus Dahlgren who is continuing to make inroads at the moment. He's run about 8 seconds off Eduardo Beninca. He's going to go through ahead of Petrovsky. Overall, Dahlgren should do the same. And George Angelidis is the latest to come into pit lane. He's in 17th position. He's going to make his way down the order by the time he rejoins back onto the circuit. So through Ascari again. There we see Herlock. There we see Kirsten, who is not too far off him now. Herlock's victory is far from secure at the moment. As I mentioned before, he finished runner-up at Daytona. He finished runner-up at Mugello. Now, finishing second wouldn't be the worst result in the world. You know, finishing 3 second places to begin the season is fantastic. But it's the win that he wants, which will help in the long run in the championship for when it finishes in December. And Kirsten just wants to get his season very much up and running. Petrovsky is showing that he's still in the pit lane. I think he's left now, actually, is Petrovsky. Nearly a lap down on the leaders as he rejoins. Well, he's already a lap down. This will be the second time he's been lapped. He's running in 12th position overall and 3rd in class. Becky Ely Clark, we spoke about earlier, she's running in 3rd in her own class of U2L SPGR5. Now we look at the leaders towards De La Rocha. There we see Herlock, Kirsten and Kirby. It's a little bit further back. The bottom right is showing Herlock that he's focused on. what is shown on the bigger picture on the left is Kirby, who was in the lead earlier on, but now he's in a fight to just keep up with Kirsten and Herlock. Not so many laps left. I think there was a slide coming out of the Lesmo from Lucas Kirsten, which will give Kirby a little bit more of a confidence boost. 6 laps to go at the end of this one. You can see Herlock slide his way through Ascari, which is not ideal, and it's almost like he's drifting. And Kirsten, well, he's got Kirby for company now because Kirby is right on the tail of him. It's coming up to around about 1.5 seconds as they continue to make their way through traffic. They're the only leaders on the lead lap now, with Oliver Day laps in 4th position. Copa Sync has got the company behind. That is Benjamin Natalik. He's running in 21st position overall. And Ben Bowman was at the top of the pile in the U2L SPGL 5 class. Is having to make his way into the pit lane for a final splash and dash. JT Tummy is the new leader in the respective class, and off goes Kirby at turn 1. Dan Kirby going through the chicane. Someone else has done so in the background, but Kirby's mistake has cost him dear, and he's back up with. We'll find out more what happened to Dan Kirby as to what caused him to go through the first chicane. The back marker could well have got in the way here. That was Petrovsky, who just pitted. He was able to let Kirby go. I think Kirby misses his braking point. Oh no, he doesn't. He caught the curb. He caught the curb, did Dan Kirby, and Petrovsky was just an innocent bystander. Nothing he could have done. That will, for sure, have caused damage to Kirby's car, and that's given Kirsten a little bit of breathing space to just go after Herlock now, because there's not a lot of time left in this. Around about 25 to 30 kilometres left, and Kirsten's got enough time, but he's running out of chances to make his move. And there he goes. He's going through on Herlock here on the pit straight, and Kirsten is through into the lead here, going through on the BMW. So that's the Ferrari through. Are we going to see Ferrari win out at Monza? Kirsten clearly hopes so, and Herlock will have to really, really fight back here. Has the fuel saving cost him dear, because I just wonder, being on old tyres by the looks of things, when he needed to come in for fuel, might just have cost him. Carl Stroll is the latest to come into the pit lane now in the U2L SPGR 5 AM series. He's a long way clear over Christian Doge anyway. It looks like Matt Overton's going to come out as the clear winner in that. Through go. I was going to say through go Kirsten and Herlock, but Herlock got held up, so he won't be too pleased with that. Whoever it is that's just got in the way, it might have been Jerry Chen. He's the latest to get out of the way, and Herlock was reluctant to just go through the wet patch, which won't do his tyres any good. And John Uyan, who won in his class at Mugello last time out, is on course for victory. He's only 10 seconds over Smith behind him. And in the U2L SPGR 5 class, JT Tummy also won in Mugello, and he's comfortably clear over Becky Ely-Clark, who's got back into 2nd place. So hats off to Becky, getting up that high in the field. And Ben Borman following his latest pit stop. Presumably it was it was a significantly shorter one considering the number of laps we've got left. But I think that's helped him remain in the top 3, so this has been a good race from Ben. 5 seconds to be exact for Ben Borman, but that's significantly quicker than what his rivals will have done. And he must have had clear track through all of it, so there's that to factor in. Now we see George Angelidis and finishes on Chalvers battling over 6th position through Lesmo 1. Oh, that you see Gonçalves getting offline, got caught out on the grass. So to keep it on circuit there, and likewise for George Angelidis. They've not gone long left to make an impression in this one. It's nearly over, but the battle for the lead certainly isn't. Kirsten is ahead of Herlock. The gap between the pair is 2 seconds. But Kirsten was a lot quicker over Herlock on the last lap, over 2 seconds in fact. I wonder if Herlock maybe tried to do... I feel, oh, that's a spin. Is that Benjamin Latalica that's just gone round at Ascara? And it's a yellow flag for Basink. It might be Basink who's gone round at Ascari and has rejoined. So it's all falling apart, really. It's all falling apart for Basink. Did he catch the curb and go round? We shall see. It didn't catch the curve, it just went in with too much speed. That's unfortunate, and that was enough for Ethan Funk to go through. 3 laps to go here at Monza, and Kirsten's lead has increased to 2.6, and Dan Kirby, with the damage that he picked up by riding the curb earlier at turn number 1, is consigned to a 3rd place finish here. He'll take the points and try again next time out. The season continues its circus of 1981. We go to Riverside next in 2 weeks' time. It's a 90-minute event for your information. So Uyan looks like he's got it wrapped up in the 2L SPL GR5 AM and the U2L SP GR5 Pro, you want to call it that. JT Tammy is on course to wrap it up in that respective category. There we see, is that Ethan Funk on the tail of Nicholas Kirsten? He may well have been, and Herlock has gone off again at the Della Rosia, so he's determined to make up all the time. Going through the gravel won't have done his machine too much good. The fast up of the race is Eduardo Beninca. That's the latest he's just posted, actually. He was, well, on the last time he's just posted notes of 1:47.8, but it's still considerably quicker than what Dan Kirby and Oliver Day have done. Beninca is 13 seconds off Oliver Day. There have been only a few laps to go. So he's going to have to really, really get the hammer down here. He needs to take about 4 seconds out of Day's lead, which is 4 seconds a lap out of Day's lead, which is not going to do with the amount of time we've got left. We've got a yellow flag in sector 2, which has gone away now. Gilles Lalonde, who has had another moment on circuit, is running in 22nd place overall in this one, and 8th in class. And what has he done here, Gilles Lalonde? Is the back end had stepped out, corrects the slides, he catches the curb, and it's just been one of those days for Gilles Lalonde. We won't compound his misery anymore. Back to Nicholas Kirsten, who started on the front row of the grid in 2nd place. And he's on course for victory here. He'll be the 3rd different winner overall. Eduardo Beninca took victory at Daytona. Alessandro Smeraldi, who's not here today, he won in Mugello. There'll be 3 winners from 3 in the 1981 VWSC Historic Championship. And Herlock is run about 3.5 seconds off Kirsten. Fight for the lead. There is one of the Mustangs, I believe, just going wide there, just staying out of the way. I wonder if that car's out of fuel because it's moving rather leisurely. So it could be someone miscalculating the amount of fuel which they need for the checkered flag. But Kirsten, I just hope he's got enough fuel to get to the end, because he's got 1 more lap to go of this one. As he's about to put a lap on what looks like, is that Ross? That's not Ross Smith who's in front of him. That might be, I wonder if that might be Ryan Paulbert Reyes. We'll find out in a moment. But Kirsten is very nearly there, and the gap is continuing to impress in this one. Ryan Paulbert Reyes is the next driver to be lapped by Nicholas Kirsten. With Dan Herlock in 2nd place, and Dan Kirby is continuing to drop back in 3rd position. Gap between Day and Beninca is Now only like 10.5 seconds, and Beninka is going to have to settle for 5th place. But well done to Oliver Day for getting up as high as he has been in this one, considering where he had started. And now on the last lap, there's an incident in sector 1, which is cleared. So no such. Oh, and Kirsten having to go across the chicane. And there's a car upside down. We'll find out who that is, and that's a very... We are told it might be Vinicius Chalves who's gone over. And surprise, surprise, it's the curb that has caused Vinicius Chalves to roll over here. That's very unfortunate. Very unfortunate way to end Chalves' race. But Kirsten is very close to the checker flag now. It's been a race of pit strategy here at Monza in mixed conditions. And you just see... You can see Ethan Funk trying to get through as well on Elkio Singh, who's got back ahead of him now into 5th place in class. But Kirsten is very nearly to the checker flag here. And at the bottom right is John Uyen, who's about to take victory in the 2L SPGR5 AMS class as well. But the 2L SPGR5 class is about to be wrapped up. An overall victory for Nicholas Kirsten, started on the front row of the field and got by Herlock and Kirby, both in the pits and on circuit. Nicholas Kirsten heads over the line to win the 250 kilometre of Monza of 1981 by a few seconds over Dan Herlock in 2nd place. It's a 3rd consecutive 2nd place finish for Dan, but he remains the championship leader. Dan Kirby will come home in P3 in the Porsche after the damage he picked up by going over the curb at the Rettifiglio. Looks like he's picked up some damage on the rear wing there for Dan Kirby. And JT Tammy is over the line to win in the U2L SPGR5 class with Becky Ely-Clark, who has not got over the line yet, but will do so very, very shortly. She holds off Ben Borman to the end. Ben Borman's only 1.5 seconds behind Becky, actually, so he's absolutely giving it. Putting Ely-Clark under pressure, but Ely-Clark is going to hold on for 2nd place ahead of Ben Borman. On the fresher tyres, wasn't able to close down the gap on her, but it's a class podium for him. And John Uyan is still going at the moment. Matt Overton has won in the U2L SPGR5 and class. Very, very well done to him by a comfortable margin over Carl Stroll. John Uyan is coming around the Parabolica to win by around about 4.5 seconds over Ross Smith, who's been able to get the gap down, but time has run out for Ross Smith to do anything about John. So it's John Uyan who rounds out the 2L SPGR5 and victory over Ross Smith, with Jerry Chen completing the podium in that class. And I think that's pretty much everyone over the line now. And we can run down on the final race result before we have a word with our class winners for this evening. I think Matt Overton has already finished. I think he may be just taking the cool down lap back to the pit lane. Some drivers are just... So the checker flag has fallen here at Monza after a very, very intriguing race here that we've seen mixed conditions and a lot of strategy involved. But in the end, it was Nicholas Kirsten who mastered round here at Monza to take victory. And in 2nd place was Dan Herlock, with Dan Kirby, the last driver on the lead lap, in 3rd position. And you have to find Oliver Day, who finished not too far in front over Eduardo Beninka. The last lap he did was a 153.8. And Eduardo Beninka ended up in 5th place with a 147.8. So he was like over 5 seconds quicker than Day on that last top. I think Day had that one covered. And we'll get a word with our class winners. We'll begin with today's winner. That is Nicholas Kirsten, who performed brilliantly today, becoming the third different race winner this season in the VWSC Historics of 1981. Kirsten, good evening. How are you?
Yeah, I'm fine. Thanks.
How was that for you? Because how tricky was it in those conditions there? Because most of the drivers started on slicks, including yourself. How tricky was it in those conditions?
Yes, it was quite tricky at the beginning of the race and got trickier until the first pit stop. And I think shortly before the first pit stop, the rain stopped and the track dried out a little bit. And from then on, it got a little bit easier.
And throughout the race, I think we've seen many drivers fall off the circuit as well. How have you found the 1981 machine from your side then? Because I'd imagine how nimble they are and how easy it is to just lose control each and every one of the corners. There are actually the curbs which we want to allude to, because we've seen the curbs catch a lot of drivers out during the course of it.
Yeah, the curbs are quite high, so you have to pay attention not to hit them too hard. The cars in general, yeah, as you said, a lot of fire. You have to be careful, especially out of the section. You have to pay attention to that.
Yeah, I think your connection may be going a little bit there, Nicholas. But in terms of the rest of the season, we've got Riverside next in 2 weeks. How are you feeling for that? I think we've lost Nicholas there, but we'll have a word with him maybe a little bit later, maybe once his connection sorts out. Let's have a word with John Uyan, who came out on top in the 2L SPGR5 AM series. John, good evening. How are you?
Hello, sirs. I'm happy it's over.
Yeah, you had Ross Smith on your tail as well. I think it was around about 4 seconds or something. Was he closing down the gap with you at a rate of knots?
A little bit, yeah. I did. I think 2 small mistakes. He definitely closed up the gap after the last pit stops. Yeah, I was definitely keeping an eye on that.
I imagine so. The wet conditions to begin with. I mean, there was this transition of dry to begin with. It was damp, but it lent more for dries for most of the field. And then as the rain came down, people were going on wet. Some decided to stick onto the slicks. What was the plan for you throughout all of that?
Yeah, definitely. I was watching the weather, and I did look at the weather report. I knew it was going to dry. It was going to stop raining, and it was only like 3-4% rain anyway. On the server, it said 5%. Yeah, it was definitely a concern and a bit of a risk taking, but start with dry tires and just hang in there, because it was raining a little bit, the mid stint, first stint. It was tricky, definitely got tricky when it went to 60% wetness on the track. And then thankfully stopped raining, and yeah, it was very, very tricky race for sure, grip wise.
Yeah. How have you found the 1981 machine of yours then compared to maybe of last year when we raced in the 1985s?
I'm definitely clicking with this, gelling with this Ferrari. I feel much more confident in it. Last year we tried Porsche and then switched to Jaguar. It was, we did definitely struggle with it, me and Troy especially. So this year, teaming up with George, we're doing well. I mean, he's not liking it for sure, being a Ferrari fan. But yeah, I'm definitely clicking with it.
And that victory has kept you at the top of the GR5 SP2L AM series. After 3 rounds, is there anyone else to shout to, John, before we let you go?
Again, all the drivers, it was really, tough conditions, but whatever I've seen, it was a good racing, good clean racing, as much as it could be these conditions. And of course, you guys in the booth, and thanks for all your efforts. And that's it, I believe.
Fair enough. John, well done on taking the class win today, and best of luck over at Riverside in 2 weeks.
All right, thank you guys. See you there. Bye bye.
That was John Urian who we spoke to that. Let's have a word with JT Tammy, who won out convincingly over his nearest rival. That was Becky Ely Clark and Ben Bowman, who ended up in third place. JT, good evening.
Howdy.
Howdy indeed. Was it that much of a rocky ride throughout the race for you in those tricky conditions?
Oh god, it was horrible.
What was it?
Oh yeah, I spun, I don't know, at least 4 times.
And did you hit the curb at some point, which caused the car to spin? Because we've seen numerous drivers do that over the course of the race, or at least did you maybe witness what was going on with that?
Yeah, there were some people just taking too much curb and getting some damage from that. One of them happened directly in front of me. I avoided them. I could not avoid their bumper though.
And and how would you maybe compare this one to the previous rounds of Daytona and Mugello for yourself? Have you got the handle on the 1981 machine yet?
Yeah, kinda. The conditions meant it was very tricky today, just because that car needs the rear to rotate to be quick, and with slicks out on a wet track, it was just there was too much rotation. But my racing was bad, the execution was bad, but luckily the strategy was enough that it gave me a big gap to everybody else. So I'll take it, I guess.
Yeah, it was a very convincing drive. I mean, it was like over 40 seconds or something over Becky Ely Clark. So it was one of the most dominant performances I've seen from any class in a series like this one. Is there anyone on the shout to JT before we let you go?
Just same group, Storm Gang for putting out an awesome mod, CMS for running this, all the time and effort worked to make this happen every weekend, and you guys for joining us and putting on a good show.
Wonderful. JT, very, very well done today in winning out in your class, and see you next time at Riverside in 2 weeks.
Yeah, definitely. Thanks, guys.
That was JT Tummy who we spoke to there. We'll have a word with the man who came out on top in his respective class as well. That is Matt Overton. Matt, good evening.
Good evening, or good afternoon. Great to be here.
Yeah, well, it is 10 to 9 over in the UK, where I'm from. So if you want to say good afternoon, that's absolutely fine.
I will.
As far as today's running was concerned, tricky one for you?
Oh, hugely tricky for everybody. I came out very fortunate. I went in thinking, okay, just be patient, don't worry about it. I ran a risk with the slicks to start with, and said just take your time, and it worked out. I managed to avoid any really serious damage. I did manage to take off my front wing once myself, and then I got hip checked, and the front came off again. So I drove a good part of the race without with anything, no front downforce. But fortunately, Ben Borman, I'll give a shout out to him, super set up for the Esprit, and I was able to manage it. So I'm very pleased.
Yeah, it's nice of you to mention him actually, because he was running towards the back end in the class, and then somehow found a strategy that suited him, and he just propelled up the order from there. So very well done to Ben today, because I thought he was he's one of those that's done better than I expected him to, in my honest opinion.
Well, he had a bad cue, and then some bad luck early on, and then just overcame it and ran a great race. So props to him, and shout out to Chris Ndoje, my teammate, who finished third. So really pleased with his progress, doing well. And yeah, tough race. The conditions were really weird, and cars everywhere. The curbing was really nasty. So
Yeah.
avoiding the curbing was really important.
With John Mayer not around today, you are now into the lead of the. Go on.
Yeah, tech problems for him, unfortunately, and yeah, I'll take advantage of his misery, so to speak. And but we'll keep dicing.
Okay, that's cool. Have you found the machine, by the way? Because I've asked a number of drivers about how they've been getting on with the 1981 machines. How have you found it after 3 rounds?
I'm enjoying it. I decided to stay away from the turbo boost just because I didn't want the extra complexity, and it's with setup work and practice, I'm starting to get a feel for the car. I'm clearly not going to be at the top of the pack, but once I get into a rhythm and get to know the car, I'm really enjoying it. It's a lot of fun.
Excellent. Is there anyone to shout out to, Matt, before we let you go?
Well, to the whole SGS team for the mod, to George especially for working with me in terms of some of the things for the setup and the race, and just putting on a great series here, and the modern series. Just super job, and to you guys for being here each race and giving us some tremendous publicity and a good description of the race. So there we are.
Excellent. Paul, Matt, thank you so much for speaking to us. Well done on winning out in your class today, and best of luck next time out at Riverside in 2 weeks.
Thank you. Take care.
Thank you very much, and bye-bye. That was Matt Overton there, and we might want to get a word with Paul Glover, actually, who's been working behind the scenes during the course of today. Paul, 250 kilometers at Monza, mixed conditions, especially at the beginning. It had it all, but I think by the time the second half of the race came around, drivers were able to stay on the circuit a lot more, and I just wonder what Riverside is going to produce in 2 weeks.
Yeah, hi everybody. Clearly a tricky race for a lot of the drivers, particularly at the beginning. I didn't want to flood the feed with replay after replay, but there were a lot of drivers going off. And as we saw today, there were a number of drivers that got caught out by the high curbs, especially if they go the wrong side of the curbs as well, you know, like if they don't quite make the corner. But yeah, and it's unfortunate what happened there with was it Kirby and Petrafsky? I can't remember who got caught up in that. You know, where who was in third at the time. My memory escapes me, but yeah, no, it was Kirby and Petrafsky. They're talking about it in chat. That helps. So that shows you my memory isn't as bad as I thought. But as the track started to dry out, as you rightly pointed out, Tom, things did start to settle down a little bit. We didn't get really too many close battles though, unfortunately, today. So a lot of the broadcast focused on where the close battles were, and that tended to be the top split today. So hopefully drier conditions for the next round, and some closer battles that we can show on the broadcast.
Wonderful. Paul, thank you so much for working behind the scenes and working on the replays and all that. It's been that sort of race at Monza. Very, very manic indeed. And in the end, it was Nicholas Kirsten who came out on top, with Dan Herlock in second place and Dan Kirby in third position. Well done to all our class winners that we've just spoken to just now, and we'll hope to see more of it at Riverside in a couple of weeks. Thank you so much for tuning in. Thanks to everyone that's competed as well. We go to Riverside on the 28th of Feb, and then it's Sebring a week after that on the 7th, and it's Le Mans on the 11th of April, and it's a 3-month gap before we do battle again at Watkins Glen, and there's all sorts of other circuits we'll be racing at in the back end of the year with likes of Spa, Road America, Silverstone, Nürburgring, Pagusa, Daytona again, Motorsport Park, and Brands Hatch on the 12th of December. It should be a very exciting season indeed. And well, let's hope for more of it at Riverside, and we'll find out whether Nicholas Kirsten can keep up the good work. Will we see a 4th different race winner? Well, you know where to tune in. I am Tom Cairns. Well, Paul Glover working behind the scenes, and we'll speak to you again soon when the VWSC Historics of 1981 returns. Goodbye.